Welcome back to our November weekly devotions. I'm Pastor David Schoob at Trinity Lutheran Church in West Bend, Wisconsin. We continue to focus on being thankful during this month of November. We read today from the 4th chapter of the book of Philippians, starting at the 4th verse. Rejoice in the Lord always. Again, I will say rejoice. Let your gentleness be known to everyone. The Lord is near. Do not worry about anything, but in everything, by prayer and supplication with thanksgiving, let your requests be made known to God. And the peace of God, which surpasses all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus. This is one of my favorite passages about Thanksgiving. One reason is because it always amazes me that Paul writes words like this from a prison cell, talking about rejoicing and giving thanks. Talked about seeing blessings where it's hard to see them. But it's also interesting that Paul says that we should rejoice and give thanks in everything. How can you command that of someone, to command them to give thanks in everything? Isn't Thanksgiving based on the circumstances around us, what we experience, how the day is going? Don't we have to have the gifts before us to give thanks for them? When I journal in my thanks journal, I'm looking for the good things that are going on around me. But what if you're in a terrible place? Jail, or where life is filled with suffering? What if you have trouble finding the gifts to give thanks for? We still have this strange command from Paul to give thanks. It's as if Paul says that thanksgiving comes from our determination to be thankful. Thanksgiving comes from a faith in all things that somehow, whether we see it or not, God is at work. That somehow there's something always to give thanks for. One of my favorite historical images of what Thanksgiving really is all about is the story of how we got the hymn, "Thank We All Our God." And here's the story. German pastor Martin Reinkert served in the walled town of Eilenburg during the horrors of the 30-year war from 1618 to 1648. Eilenburg became an overcrowded refuge for the surrounding area. The fugitives suffered from epidemic and famine. At the beginning of 1637, the year of the great pestilence, there were 4 ministers in Eilenburg, but one left, abandoned his post for healthier areas, and couldn't be persuaded to return. Pastor Reinkert officiated the funeral of the other 2. As the only pastor left, he often conducted funeral services for as many as 40 to 50 people a day. It became somewhere around 4,480 that he did in all. In May of that year, his own wife died. By the end of the year, the refugees had to be buried in trenches without services. In the face of overwhelming pressure, constant risk, and horrendous conditions, Reinkert never stopped ministering to the people of the city. He gave away nearly everything he owned to the poor and needy, though he could barely clothe and feed his own children. He mortgaged his own future income to provide for his family and for his community. At one point toward the end of the war, the Swedish army surrounded the city and demanded an enormous ransom from the impoverished and starving citizens. Knowing the people didn't have the money, Reinkert pleaded with the Swedes to lower the amount, only to be rejected. It's reported that Reinkert returned to the city, fell on his knees, and said, "Come, my children, we can find no hearing, no mercy with men. Let us take refuge with God." He then began to pray so fervently that the Swedish general was moved to lower his price to less than 5% of the original amount. After nearly 30 years of ceaseless struggle, it began to look like peace was within grasp. Reinkert wanted to give his children a song to sing to God in thanks at the dinner table. He sat down and composed what would become one of the most well-known Thanksgiving hymns of all times. "Now thank we all our God." In fact, it's been said that aside from Martin Luther's "A Mighty Fortress is Our God," this is probably one of the most songs within Lutheran churches. Yet while living in a world dominated by death, Rinkert wrote this timeless prayer, this thanksgiving for his children to hang on to. Some of the words from the song go like this. Now thank we all our God, with hearts and hands and voices, who wondrous things hath done, in whom this world rejoices, who from our mother's arms hath led us on our way, with countless gifts of love, and still is ours today. Maybe Thanksgiving starts in the moment we realize that God has promised to be with us, so that we can be assured that there is always something to give thanks for. As today's prayer will attach a link to the song, Now Thank We All Our God, go and listen to the hymn and find thanks in your heart as well. Have a good day.